Welcome. I'm Ashley Thomas. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the internal, nature, community, and pursue the common good. We welcome you in your brokenness and your wholeness, no matter who you have been, who you are, or who you are becoming. We greet you today with love. I'd like to extend a special welcome to everyone who is watching us on YouTube this morning. During the prelude, please introduce yourself in the comments and let us know where you're joining us from. If you're in OKC, what neighborhood are you in? Or if you're elsewhere, what city are you in? And now the prelude prepares us for worship.
We light our chalice in Midtown Oklahoma City on land that was home to first Americans, including the Apache, Caddo, and Wichita, on land that was taken from the Muskogee and Seminole and other removed and relocated peoples. We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope. Again, welcome. I'm Reverend Diana Davies. My pronouns are she, her, and for those who are blind or visually impaired, I am a white woman with gray hair wearing a clerical robe and stole. I want to also remind you that our sanctuary is equipped with a telecoil hearing loop system, and we have large print orders of service and hymnals in the back. This is an especially sacred time of year, when the holy seasons of 3 world religions all coincide. Our Muslim siblings are celebrating Ramadan, a time of atonement, fasting, and prayer, emphasizing community and generosity. Beginning this Wednesday evening, members of our Jewish family will commemorate the exodus from slavery in Egypt through ritual, prayer, storytelling, lighting candles, and the special foods of the Passover Seder. And for Western Christians, today is Palm Sunday, the beginning of Holy Week, which commemorates Jesus' last week from his arrival into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey to his resurrection celebrated on Easter Day. Now, this great coincidence of sacred time is occurring a week after we experienced an alignment of 5 planets. Sometimes nature and time do seem to speak to us, and at this moment, the message seems to be align, connect, communicate. And so into this great junction, this cosmic correspondence, may we too enter into a time of sacred connection. Come, let us worship together. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit for our opening hymn. It's in the gray hardback hymnal, number 129, Let Love Continue Long. Please be seated. If you've been attending First Unitarian for some time now, you know that our congregation was pursuing an accessibility and inclusion ministry certification through the Equal Access Program of the Unitarian Universalist Association. The certification program was intended as a way for congregations to manifest their commitment to the full engagement of people with disabilities in all aspects of church life. Sadly, a little less than a year ago, the UUA discontinued the certificate program, and our accessibility and inclusion ministry team took a break from meeting. Now, this does not mean that we no longer are committed to the struggle for inclusion and against ableism. The work goes on, just in a different way. One way that we continue to do the work is through education and awareness. And today we will be shining a light on a form of disability that is strongly presented within our congregation, but which we rarely discuss: mental illness. And I'd like to invite Tahira Johnson, a member of our Accessibility and Inclusion team, up to share a first reading.
Wearing a black cap and a black motorized wheelchair every day. This is a reading from Reverend Barbara Miley's book, Held, Showing Up for Each Other's Mental Health. A member of a Unitarian Universalist congregation told the following story. Her daughter was diagnosed with schizophrenia. The condition affected her life every day, and she had been repeatedly hospitalized. The daughter had been in the psychiatric ward for several weeks. The family was endeavoring to visit her every evening, often rushing from work to the hospital, just grabbing from the refrigerator anything that might serve for dinner on the way out the door. Meanwhile, her husband had been asked if he could provide a meal for a family in the congregation who had a family member recovering from a serious operation. He agreed, cooked a meal, and delivered it to the family while skipping a meal himself and rushing with his wife to the psychiatric hospital to visit their daughter. Neither the minister nor anyone in the congregation was visiting her, nor had they been asked to do so. After a few days, his wife considered the situation and thought, wait a minute, why was he asked to prepare a meal for a family with a hospitalized member when we are in a similar situation and no one is bringing us meals? Is there a double standard here? The answer is yes, there is a double standard. It is common practice in most Unitarian Universalist faith communities to offer many forms of pastoral care to people and families coping with trauma or physical illness. But all too often, mental illness goes unseen and unattended to. Mental illnesses are sometimes called no casserole diseases. People don't bring casseroles to homes where someone is hospitalized for mental problems.
Is this working okay? Okay. I'm Marcia Woodward, President-elect of the congregation. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm an older white lady with short brown hair and glasses and a burgundy sweater. Before the call to offering, I'd like to give you an update on our pledge drive for the church year, which the church year begins this July. At this point, the total amount pledged is $361,782,000. While this is worth celebrating, I need to note that this is about $34,000 below last year's pledge. In order to be able to compensate our staff fairly and continue our programming just at current levels, we need to raise a bottom line amount of at least $400,000. We know that many of our members are already pledging the most they possibly can given financial restraints and family responsibilities. And so we must ask once again, if you have not yet pledged, please do so now before our church members have to begin the budgeting process from a position of needing to make cuts. If you have already pledged and have any capacity to increase your pledge by even a small amount, please do not delay. Our congregational meeting will be in early June, and we have to have time to build a budget that is responsible and sustainable, while at the same time reflecting our congregation's values. And I would just like to add a personal note here about reflecting values. I stopped and thought about my pledge and other things I spend on a monthly basis, and I realized I had pledged less than I spend in an average month on eating out at restaurants. And I thought, something's wrong here. So I'm going to be increasing my pledge today. And I hope some of you will think along those lines and see if there's any way you can increase your pledge too. Every Sunday we take an offering. Since 2002, all the cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work, our Change for Change partners. For the month of April, our Change for Change partner is OKC Beautiful's Garden Support Program, OKC Harvest. Their mission is to bring environmental science to life through a school garden. They involve students in the preparation of garden soil, planting, growing, and eating healthy foods. Funds collected from Change for Change will go to support school gardens at Cleveland Elementary, Wilson Elementary, and Bodine Elementary schools. For those of you who are in the sanctuary with us today, in just a moment we'll be passing the offering plate. And if you're watching us online, please make your gift by sending a check to First Unitarian. Just write Change for Change on the memo line, or make an online payment through our website, 1UC.org.
Good morning. My name is Wendy. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a Caucasian female with kind of blonde, curly hair. I wear thick bifocals because I have a visual disability. I also have PTSD and high anxiety. And I also recently, having Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a condition that affects connective tissue, have had a total hip replacement and have had multiple broken bones. I am wearing a shirt many of you may have seen. It is a combination of the pride shirt with a disability pride zigzag on it. Briefly, I want to tell you about this zigzag. This zigzag on a black background is the disability pride flag. Black is the symbol for mourning for those who have suffered violence due to their disabilities. It is also a symbol of rebellion and pride. The 5 colors on my shirt, then the zigzag. Blue symbolizes mental health and psychiatric disorders. Yellow is for intellectual and disabilities such as autism, developmental disabilities. White stands for invisible and undiagnosed conditions. Red is for motor disabilities, and green is for sensory disabilities. The lightning rod original shape, this flag was created by a woman named Anne McGill in 2019, represents the ins and outs of people with disabilities trying to navigate their world, the health system, as well as their creativeness and adaptability. However, 2 years later, the flag was updated, and now I don't have it on my shirt, obviously, because mine has the original zigzag. There is due to persons with disabilities that are triggered by visual stimuli, such as those with migraines and seizure disorders, to be accepting of them, the new flag has the 5 colors and a straight diagonal line. I'm going to be doing another reading from the book Held by UU Minister Barbara Myers. What would a congregation that is supportive and inclusive of people with disabilities and mental illness look like? This is a story that was shared by Reverend Mark Morrison Reed that provides one example. Nate was maybe in his 30s. He would sit in the front row, shuffling his legs, rubbing them, rocking back and forth, and kind of fidgeting during the worship service. He was a bit awkward. His voice was loud, and from time to time, he would disappear. One weekday, Donna, Mark's wife and co-minister, and I, this is Mark, were at a bridge party with the senior members of the congregation. Bridge is a card game for those of anyone younger than age 50. They were the participants were mostly in their 80s, and we gathered in a nice suburban apartment. There was plenty of yummy appetizers, serious card playing going on, and some light conversation, until the hostess kind of leaned over and remarked to me, "I don't know how you can put up with that young man fidgeting around throughout the service. It's just terrible and distracting." What happened next left me stunned. One octogenarian said, "You do know it's his medication that makes him do that. It has a lot of side effects." A retired public health nurse told us that she had spoken to him and knew what kind of problems he was having, or what had been bothering him. A former university president said, "I was once institutionalized for some mental health issues." And someone else said, "My granddaughter has bouts like that." Neither Donna nor I said a word. My amazement turned to pride, and I knew why Nate kept coming to our church. It was not about sermons, whether they were scholarly or entertaining, about the music, about the process of the service. It was our lived theology, our love, acceptance, and understanding of this young man. God made manifest the love that surrounded him. We need to live out the challenge of our faith. Love is always the central question as we pursue our lives.
Good morning. I've been struggling with my mental health issues since the age of 25. Every time I get out of them, I look for support groups and I turn to my mental health team, which is the PAC team. PAC stands for Programs of Assertive Community Treatment. PAC is a team treatment approach designed to provide conservative community-based services and support to people who with more insertive psychiatric needs. The approach provides long-term, integrated, and insertive services aimed at meeting the needs of each individual. PAC services are unique in that they are provided by a team and, when possible, in an individual's natural settings such as their homes or employment site. Psychiatric and substance abuse emergency services are available to these individuals 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every person with mental illness needs a team which can include professionals, family, friends, and members of a congregation. If you're wondering how you can hold someone with a mental health disorder, remember some of these important ideas. Embrace empathy and validation. Don't judge. Remember that most people will struggle with their mental health at some point in their lives. Learn the symptoms and then stop taking them personally. If you love someone who is struggling with mental illness, remember it is not your fault that they are ill. Let go of your timetable. Don't say things like, "You've been depressed long enough, it's time to cheer up," or "Shouldn't you be better by now?" The next point is encourage outside support and know that you alone can't fix it. That's why we need teams. Just being present is so important. And lastly, remember that we are holding each other. Just because someone might have a mental health disorder, we are not monsters. We are human beings. Our minds and our lives matter.
Would you please join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation? This prayer is adapted from a text by UCC minister Reverend Alan Johnson. Spirit of life, source of love. As a congregation, we are glad to lift up our voices and our spirits to break the silence that often happens when we are confronted with mental illness. As a faith community, we name the gifts and the often unnamed experiences which come to those who live with a mental illness, such as major depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, substance abuse, addiction, historic and generational trauma, racial trauma, grief, and eating disorders. We name the hope which upholds our spirit through honest sharing. the pain when people turn away because of fear, the courage to speak truth with love, the isolation that comes when no one knows what to say, the strength from being with others who listen compassionately, the realization that mental illnesses and brain disorders can be managed, the exhaustion that comes with living with a mental illness, as well as for those who are caregivers. The welcome of mental health as part of our church's ministry and outreach. The wisdom that comes when we become educated about mental health. The spirituality that comes when we accompany those who show both resilience and vulnerability in their lives affected by mental illness. We receive these gifts that we have named, those which are welcomed and those which are challenges. And above all, we remember that we are never alone. And now, in silence, I invite you to lift upon your hearts those things for which you rejoice, those things about which you grieve, and the names of those who should be held in our love and care. May it be so. Amen. There is a story behind that beautiful anthem we just heard. Unfortunately, it's a somewhat convoluted story. Do a Google search for the phrase, "I believe in the sun even when it's not shining," and you will find different accounts about words found on a cellar wall in a concentration camp in Cologne, Germany. And to a researcher named Everett Howe, many of these stories didn't ring true. So he went in search of the original source, and he finally found it in a Swiss newspaper from June of 1945. In that newspaper, Howe found an article by an anonymous reporter that talked about the Catholic anti-Nazi resistance in Cologne. The reporter recounts going into underground passages that had been used as places of refuge for those hiding from the Gestapo. Specifically, the reporter mentions that 9 Jewish people had hidden in these underground passages for 4 months. In this subterranean sanctuary, the reporter found a kitchen, a small library, oil lamps, and a radio. The Jewish people hiding there had relied on allies above the ground to send them supplies, including food. Food that would have been extremely precious during a time of strict rationing, when there was hardly enough for a person to eat themselves, let alone to share with someone else. The anonymous reporter then describes an inscription found on a wall in this underground hiding place. Translated into English, the words are, quote, "I believe in the sun, though it be dark. I believe in God, though he be silent. I believe in neighborly love or compassion, though it be unable to reveal itself," unquote. I believe in the sun, though it be dark. This is different from believing even in the sun even when it's not shining. For the person who originally wrote those lines, the sun was indeed shining. It's just that they couldn't see it because they were underground. And they could believe in neighborly love even if it couldn't show itself in public, because they were the recipients of such love in the form of food and other essentials delivered in secret and the protection of darkness. They could believe in such love because it was literally what sustained them. But then there, in between those lines about believing in the sun that you can't see and believing in compassion that must be hidden, that must literally go underground, there is that most heartbreaking phrase, "I believe in God even when God is silent." For the Jews hiding in the Cologne tunnels, the silence of God must have been deafening. Surely this is what many Jews asked during and after the Holocaust. Where was God? Why didn't God speak? Why didn't God protect his children? And yet, despite God's apparent inaction, despite all evidence to the contrary, this nameless individual hiding in the darkness chooses to believe in their God. How do they do that? Why do they do that? Maybe they were able to keep believing in a silent and invisible power and grace because they knew there was still a sun, even though they couldn't see it. and because they knew there was human compassion, even though it had to be hidden. The Holocaust was an incomparable tragedy, and there is no excuse for those who have dared to compare it to things like COVID mask and vaccine mandates. That is a thing. I'm not comparing any other historical event or phenomenon to the Holocaust, but the experience of that one person writing those lines about belief that no one might ever read on a wall in darkness is an experience that is comparable to that of others who have suffered greatly, including the experience of those who suffer from mental illness. Too many people experiencing mental illness are forced to go underground, to hide or be hidden away because society tells them that they are not wanted, that they are pariahs, or that their simple presence makes others uncomfortable. All too often, the underground is an actual prison cell. According to multiple scholarly sources, individuals with mental illness and substance use disorders are significantly overrepresented in the country's correctional facilities at a rate 3 to 12 times higher than the general population. Even more common than this extreme form of exile, though, is a kind of soft rejection. People with mental illness might be accepted into the community, but only if they can keep their challenges a secret. Only if those names that we named before, like depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, addiction, remain unspoken. But the underground can also be a function of mental illness itself, a sense of separation from the world, a kind of existential exile. At the Vesper service that we held here on Thursday evening, Reverend Dr. Lisa Wolf shared a reading of Psalm 88, the most devastating of all the Psalms of lament. She read it as a reflection of the grief that many of us are feeling in the face of endless streams of mass shootings, endless gun violence in this country. 4 more deaths to gun violence in Oklahoma City last night. In the Hebrew scriptures, there are many psalms of lamentation, but most of them end with some kind of affirmation along the lines of, although everything is terrible, I still trust you will do good things, God. But this one, Psalm 88, has no such statement of hope. Put into contemporary language and paraphrasing, the psalm reads like this: My soul is full of troubles. My life is sinking into the grave. I am counted among the dead. I am like those who have no help, like those forsaken, like a corpse, like those whom God has forgotten, who are cut off from God. You've made my companions shun me. You've made me a thing of horror to them. I am shut in so that I can't escape. I can hardly see for weeping. Every day I cry out to you, God. Do you work wonders for those who are already dead? Are your wonders known in the grave? I cry out to you. Why do you ignore me? Why do you hide your face from me? I suffer from terrors. I am desperate. And your anger sweeps over me and assaults me like I am going to be destroyed. All day long, from all sides, terrible things are closing in on me. My friends and neighbors shun me. Darkness is my closest friend. Now, not all mental illness is the same. Each experience is different. But so many of the emotions described in this text can be symptoms of mental illness. Hopelessness, isolation, confusion, despair, fear, mistrust, feeling trapped, feeling desperate. Psalm 88 may especially resonate with anyone who has ever experienced severe depression. This is the underground, the deepest underground. And yet, even in this most despairing of psalms, the sun is still shining somewhere. Because the opening lines of the psalm are these: O Lord, God of my salvation, when at night I cry out in your presence, let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry. Despite everything, the person in despair is still talking to someone. God is silent, but that doesn't mean that the psalmist must be silent. They keep talking. They keep complaining. They keep crying to someone. That Psalm 88 has words at all and is not just a big empty space of silence. Is cause for hope. The words that were written on a wall in an underground hiding place in Cologne are a kind of psalm, a song to the great mystery. Embedded within words of hope is also a lament. I am in darkness. Acts of kindness must be hidden. God is silent. And yet, the writer chooses to believe that there is still something beyond the silence, because there is still something within the darkness. There is food that came from someone above ground, risking their life to save another person, out of neighborly love, out of compassion. And perhaps that food includes bread made from grain, which could only grow because somewhere the sun was shining. In our community of care, we are not called to be psychiatrists or counselors. We are not called to fix anyone who is hurting. And in the vast majority of cases, caring does not involve risking our lives. We are only called to be the proof of human compassion, even if it is quiet compassion. We are only called to be the ear beyond the great silence, a listening presence. And if we are among those who have spent time underground ourselves, but now live mostly above ground in a place of mental health, our very presence can be a reminder that somewhere there are people living in sunshine, that the sun exists. Of course, we should avoid thinking of ourselves only as helpers, only as listeners, because chances are good that every one of us will experience some challenge to our mental health at some point in our lives. And at that point, we will be the ones seeking help, seeking a listening presence. I believe in the sun, even though it be dark, because someone who lives in the sunshine is courageous enough to step into the darkness with me. I believe in God, though God be silent, because I know that beyond that silence, there is a listening ear. I believe in compassion, though it be unable to reveal itself, because I have experienced it. Because I have known grace through the kindness and the courage of others. I believe. I believe. Would you please rise in body or in spirit as we sing hymn 125 in the gray hymnal, From the Crush of Wealth and Power.
From the crush of wealth and power, something broken in us all. Wakes the spirit's silent hour, leading with a poignant call. Bind all my wounds again. Even now our hearts are weary of the friend we need so much. When I see the pain you carry, shall I with a gentle touch bind all your wounds again? When our love for one another makes our burdens light to bear, find a sister and a brother, hungry for the feast we share. Bind all their wounds again. Every time our spirits languish, terrified to draw too near, may we know each other's anguish, and with love that casts off fear, bind all our wounds again.
We extinguish our chalice flame, but not the light of love and community, which burns in our hearts.
Our closing words are from Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. After our service, all are invited to join us in Daniel Hall for fellowship and a cup of coffee.